Oh, okay. Oh, I didn't.
Right here.
Oh, good. I'm
Here we
glad
go.
you brought it
We've
with
got
you
Eric
because I
is
sent it
going
out,
to
but I
start.
didn't. Okay, we've got Eric. Now, the agenda is not necessarily in order because we go by the way that we all sit at the table as we come in. But Eric, you're up first with the Fly Creek apartment complex.
Yes. You know, we had a very heavy rainstorm last week, and there were some social media posts about, you know, turbid water, and there were some things that folks kind of assumed that it came from that site. And anytime we get a heavy rainstorm, I know Richard's the same way and several other departments, as soon as we start getting rain, there are certain places we hop in the trucks and we start looking for flow, for turbidity, for volume. And you know, Fly Creek, the apartments, the retreat at Fly Creek was, you know, a very much discussed project. There was opinion both ways, and in the end, it was legal per our ordinances, so the permit was issued. And it is probably the largest single land disturbance project that the city probably has ever had. I mean, it's a big site.
Hence all the discussion.
And all the discussion. But the developer also, during those discussions, made a lot of assurances and a lot of things that they were going to do. And so far, they have met what they said they were going to hold it in place. And they've got a good vegetated slope all the way down, and that goes more than 1,000 feet down. At the bottom of the hill, you can see they have a gabion wall, which is part of their storm discharge system. And they've got 2 rows, you can't see both of them, but they've actually got 2 rows of Class A commercial grade silt fence down at the base. And that's the vegetative covered. One of the issues we also had the same issue on another site. We had a beautiful stand of green grass holding all the dirt in place, and then we had a 2-month drought, and all the grass died. So we have been hitting up the contractors to go back and revegetate these, because that's the first thing we want them to do. So you go down to the base, and those are the last 2. There's a row that's before you get to this, but that's the gabion wall system and the fencing that goes along their border. So you can see 3 layers there. It hits the gabion, then it goes to the first fence, then it stops at the second fence. So that's kind of the layers that they've got in place to try to control it. And in all of those, the water didn't breach any of those areas. We required them to put an aggregate rock base down on all their parking and drive areas. When we went up and looked at it, because of the construction, it's kind of gotten ground down into the dirt. So they are bringing in more truckloads of dirt, and they're kind of fluffing the rock, for lack of a better word. They're going to come, they're going to lift, they're going to drop.
Very good, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any questions for Eric? Okay, Richard.
Yeah, just very quickly, since it is officially hurricane season, and as the old joke goes down here, we have 2 seasons, and that's summer and hurricane, or football and hurricane. As you know, we have a robust emergency management operations contained here within the city, but we are a cooperative entity that works not only with our county EMA as well as the state EMA, who then works with FEMA, which is the federal emergency management. But one of the things that has been introduced this year for our citizens is the disaster preparedness guide for 2019 hurricane season. And these are available free of charge in the city here. Our citizens can pick them up at City Hall and at the Nick Center. And you know, some very, very good information here. First of all, do a little plug that we do have directions from our city of how to stay connected for not only emergencies but other community information through our Everbridge notification. And if our citizens hadn't signed up, it's very easy. If you use a smartphone or you use email, you can get Everbridge notifications, and you can kind of select the information you want, everything from public meetings down to emergencies, road closures, etc. The other thing I really think is great is that we want our citizens to be prepared themselves, and there is a recommendation for kind of an emergency preparedness kit that you put together in your household, and it has a nice build-a-kit item here, and it gives all kind of recommendations as well. And then finally, for us in the sanitation business, there's a wonderful direction and a pictograph of how you would put out your disaster debris to be collected, and very valuable information. So great guide, a lot of information in it. We want our citizens to be prepared, just as the city is prepared, and these are available free of charge, and at the Nick Center and at City Hall. So that's my public service announcement for today.
Beautiful.
Very good. Jill?
Budget preparations are well underway. Most of the departments have preliminary finished their budgets, if not almost there. We will soon be scheduling meetings for those department heads to meet with the mayor and myself. So we are getting ready and amped up for our budget season.
Thank you.
We're all very excited about budget.
The enthusiasm around here is palpable.
So one thing that we want to note is that it's almost 2020, which means the 2020 census is upon us. We are getting ready here in the city to launch our census efforts. We will soon be the mayor will be appointing a complete count committee that will undertake those efforts here in the city to kind of help us reach the harder to reach populations and the people who maybe wouldn't be completing the census or wouldn't think to complete the census. We know there has been an extremely high rate of growth, and this is our best way to accurately count what that growth is, which will help us. Obviously, that count helps the reapportion of political representation for states, and it's a key factor in addressing and dispersing the federal funding fairly. So that's coming up next month, so be looking. Also coming up next month, we have the 125th anniversary celebration kickoff. So our 125th anniversary is November the 15th. And for the months leading up to that, all of our city departments will be working together to kind of really foster that cool community spirit that we have here in Fairhope. We'll have some programming at the Nick Center and the library and the Museum of History, and it'll all culminate in November for a celebration. So we've got that going. And then finally, the bike racks have been placed on De Lamar. They're getting used, which is awesome. They're on the both ends of that street, and those are a direct effort of the Bicycle and Pedestrian Committee and the Public Works Department working really hard to get that out. And then I believe we've got more to be placed on the municipal pier coming soon. So,
Okay. Thank you, Jessica. Richard?
Good afternoon. Before I get started, let me say we got to play Quail Creek Sunday, the golf course. And the greens and the fairways are in very great shape. And it was the air conditioners broke down on the course. I don't know who's supposed to be fixing that, but it was kind of hot.
Call Lance.
But anyway,
I'll turn in a work request on that, okay?
yeah, thank you. It would have been a great help. We had to drink a lot of liquid refreshments to try to stay cool. Didn't affect our golf game until toward the end. But anyway, we talking about Everbridge and talking about customer notification. We had an incident last week that we're trying to work our way through. And erosion issues don't just happen at new project sites. This particular erosion issue that happened on South Drive at the south entrance to Rock Creek, it's something that maybe was accumulating over time and got worse and worse and worse until the eventual end result was our 12-inch water main that feeds the booster pump that supports the water system at Rock Creek blew a gasket basically and came apart because the 90-degree bend that turns into the subdivision was about 4 feet above where the new channel was, and the erosion had caused it to fail that way. But we are working with the highway department. Our public works crew came out and they worked to reroute some of the drainage systems out there, and they're going to redo some of that work that had been done, I don't know, 10 or 12 years ago. And then, as Riviera Utilities got involved, there was some underground primary that was exposed. Our gas system was involved, and then our sewer force main. And if there's any luck to be talking about in terms of what could have happened to be worse than what it already was or already is, we had about 15 feet of sewer force main exposed and just suspended in air, and thankfully it held together, and we have now put some reinforcement underneath it to get it fixed. But and the Rock Creek residents, because the booster station is not working, they are experiencing low water pressure. And I mentioned the Everbridge right off the bat. We're trying to notify people as best we can. The Property Owners Association, Lynn, I think they're aware of it, and
Yes,
we've
yeah, we
sent some
sent out an
information.
e-blast to Rock Creek.
So we tried to explain what the issue is and how we're trying to deal with it. The Highway Department has an emergency contractor, Thornton Construction, and they mobilized. I just came back from there a little while ago, and they mobilized a track hoe, and they're going to start working on the culvert that comes under South Drive and flows north. They're going to try to extend that culvert about 40 feet so it gets well beyond the utilities, and hopefully we'll be able to solve that issue from happening again for hopefully a pretty long time, if forever. But we do have to rework the sewer force main, and we have to rework the water main, and we'll be working with them first thing in the morning at least to make sure we have a plan of attack that gives everybody an opportunity to be in there, work safely, and get that work done. One of the results of that problem was that the 12-inch water main was the only service to Publix. And so that Tuesday afternoon, when that rain event occurred, Publix was out of water because we had to shut the water main off on the south side of Fly Creek. And they were out of water all that afternoon and that night. We met out there about 5 o'clock in the morning and had chlorinated a jumper, basically a fire hose, to provide water off of the 8-inch line that was the original feed to Rock Creek. And, you know, so we worked with the Highway Department very well to get emergency permitting done. We cut a valve in there, and Publix is now back to normal, which means our fire protection system is operable. So, and that's a good thing. But you know, we're working on different concepts about having to have interconnects between those two lines along the way. So maybe we will be able to better isolate issues like that if they come up in the future. But you know, we talk about the infrastructure system, and you know, we talk about the manpower that it takes to support it. And you know, in a perfect world, there would be opportunities to patrol those lines more frequently, and maybe we could have mitigated that ahead of time. You know, I'm not saying that we would have, but it's a possibility that we would have patrols set up to, and we have some other cross-country lines that probably need to be looked at on occasion. That same sewer force main was exposed in 2 other places further down. And you know, we're trying to work, as Jill mentioned, on the budget to put some personnel in place that we can use for maintenance, and maybe even get some personnel to do some of the improvements we're trying to make, because we do have a lot in terms of infrastructure improvement that we need to start looking at as we get the first initial transmission projects put together. We'll be working our way out, and you know, if we can build in-house a force main extension, one of those areas we're talking about doing is at Thompson Hall Lift Station. We're talking about bypassing some of the existing systems that pump into that, White Grove being the primary target now. And you know, if we can make those simple additions to the transmission system, we can build redundancy in it. And we can take some of the load off some of the stations that are currently, you know, a little bit more loaded than what we'd like for them to be, and that would be our goal for that. But it's been a pretty exciting couple of days, and you know, all of our crews, I'm proud as I can be that everybody worked together, and you know, the kind of teamwork we had for those types of events is critical to our success for getting these things done in a short period of time. But I do apologize to the Rock Creek residents. If they can do something with their irrigation systems in the meantime, you know, it doesn't hurt to turn the valve off so that it doesn't have to irrigate every day. And you know, I think we had some people that were through there this morning and said there were a lot of people irrigating when people were trying to utilize water for the basic necessities, you know, which is cooking and cleaning and getting ready for work. So anyway, that's where we are with that.
Still sort of on target for the end of the week fix? Or
That's what our hope is. We'll know more tomorrow morning. They were going to try to mobilize this morning, then it was at lunch, and then just about 2 o'clock this afternoon, the track hoe pulled in, and I think tomorrow morning about 7:30 we'll be looking with the contractor how we're going to address getting the material in we need to get in so that we can have a platform to work off of for our water main connection. So that's what
Now,
we're.
I would personally encourage anybody, Rock Creek, Eastern Rock Creek, Sandy Ford, and Firefly, though we sent the email out to the Rock Creek group, the POAs don't have the same mailing list or whatever, but any of you who are watching, I encourage you to please turn off your sprinkler system for a while.
And I want to clear, the Everbridge system, you can be notified for things that happen within your vicinity too. I mean, there are ways to do it by GIS location. And if we have everybody committed to that notification system, then, you know, you'll be one of the first ones to know when we have problems that affect your area. And I think that's
That went out this morning on Everbridge. I do have to tell you that, yeah, I'm surprised you haven't gotten more phone calls, because I prayed that I
We've
had
had
enough
quite
water
a
to get
few.
the shampoo out of my hair this morning.
We've had quite a few. And
I
we're,
can
you know,
imagine.
we're apologetic, but at the same time, I mean, you know, it's one of those things that if we would have known ahead of time, we would have certainly done something about it, but we weren't in charge of the drainage on the highway anyway. And it was full of kudzu. I mean, you
Oh, yeah.
couldn't see
That hides a lot.
anything. We had to cut our way in just to see what it looked like.
Yeah.
And kind of as a companion update, you know, one of the components of this project is that there was some existing city drainage that was not necessarily the cause, but could have been a contributing factor that had been installed really poorly and incorrectly in a bad location. We've re-engineered that. As I was going out to the warehouse today, the pipe for that project had arrived. So we will be, it's going to be busy as an ant mound out there, because we're going to also, our goal is to have the permanent new drainage on the city side of the project completed and properly plumbed, and where it is completely removed from exposure to the utilities, so
Right.
that it can't be a contributing factor in the future. So
Super.
a lot of coordination. Richard has been phenomenal as far as working with all the moving parts, because really it really is an effort between Riviera, the state, Fairhope Utilities, and Public Works, and it's been a good team effort.
Super.
Thank
Super.
you all.
Thank you. Buford, we finally have an almost reveal, huh?
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Well, I guess I'll begin by reminding anyone watching, and if they're able to attend the council meeting tonight, if not, if they're watching, that during the mayor's report, Mayor will give us an update on some staffing matters related to the planning department. So be aware of that, and if you're not attending in person, you'll be able to see that you'll be able to watch that during the video portion. So she'll update us
For all departments, but.
Exactly. So we have some new hires coming aboard at certain times, and we'll talk about that. But what I wanted to talk about today is a continued update on our Greeno Road Corridor Overlay District, and not really to spend a lot of time in this meeting talking about details, but just talking about overview and schedule. But I did want to thank our citizens for their input and for reaching out to staff about this, because it gives us the opportunity to answer some questions. So the only thing I'll talk about from a technical standpoint during this meeting very briefly is that certainly it's a large, complicated document. The zoning ordinance is certainly a large, complicated document with many moving parts. It covers many different areas. What I wanted to clarify for anyone listening to us or watching this meeting today, the Greeno Road Corridor Overlay is a text amendment to the zoning ordinance. Staff is not proposing nor requesting a mass rezoning of property in the city of Fairhope. And I think there's possibly some confusion, or at least I've been made aware of some confusion about that. So I just wanted to clarify that this is a text amendment to the zoning ordinance. An overlay is just that. We overlay the underlying zoning and add some additional requirements or allowances for the underlying zoning underneath. That is what we're working on and what we're hoping to accomplish. So whatever the property is zoned now, it will remain that way unless a property owner or as a part of the development process requests a rezone. What I did want to touch on today is from a scheduling standpoint that the next version, the latest and greatest revisions to the actual document will be heard by the Planning Commission a week from today during the July 1st Planning Commission meeting. Staff, me, will not request the Planning Commission act upon that document. They certainly can if they wish, but staff will not request that they act upon that document. That will not occur until the August Planning Commission meeting. I have an actual document ready right now. The agenda for Monday's Planning Commission meeting is being compiled, will be published online following the normal procedure, and then the current document will be a part of that online agenda. Just a couple of notes here. What we discovered is that the corridor itself, trying to write it as a standalone portion within the zoning ordinance was becoming just so cumbersome that the document was becoming too large, too complicated. What that required is we've simplified and streamlined the overlay, but that required edits to the rest of the zoning ordinance in certain locations. So what the document will contain is not the entire zoning ordinance, but excerpts of the zoning ordinance that did have to be edited to make them agree with and complement the overlay, but not the entire zoning ordinance itself. So there will be some portions of the zoning ordinance, such as the lighting section. It's been rewritten. We also had to add to and enhance certain parts of the zoning ordinance, such as related to convenience stores. So some routine edits and modernizations of the zoning ordinance that really need to occur anyway are going to be incorporated into this process, so that way they work with and complement the Greeno Road corridor overlay. So that is a bit of a preface. We'll go to it in sufficient detail, a sufficient Buford King level detail. We will go into that sufficient level detail at Monday's meeting.
Okay. Very good, thank you. Kim, what's going on in the Treasurer's Department?
Very busy. Last week I did get the documents for the lease for the garbage truck that came in, and so the payment has been made to the vendor, and so we've got the documents to be signed. And I'm working with Caterpillar on 2 pieces of equipment that had came in earlier this year at a 5.35 rate, and to be able to get it refinanced at our local bank at 2.87. So I'm working with Caterpillar on trying to get required documents for the bank to be able to finance that, and then just been working on streamlining processes.
You've done a lot. I mean, I know you're not mentioning some of it, but we were all whistling and very happy at the supervisor meeting. A lot of good things. Thank you.
Well, thank you.
Tom, do you have anything?
I don't have anything.
Okay. Mayor?
Okay. Most of my updates are going to come during the mayor report, but I will be discussing the Auburn study that is needed for, it's a comp study that should be in place, an updated one. So we're making sure that we pay our great employees, comparable to other areas, but more importantly, we want to be even more desirable place to live by doing that. And but this particular study will also help us bring our job descriptions to a federal standard and make the descriptions more consistent and in line with what employees are actually doing. And then I'm also going to go over full-time employees and how this has grown with population. And the answer is it has not, in a nutshell. And then talk about just strategic planning in general and the need to do this before reactionary decisions are made, because we really want to do things at a higher level with 44% growth since 2010. And all that has to be part of a strategic plan that involves all of our city employees and our citizens. And that's really what is lacking right now. So we will talk at 4:30 for the work session. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much for coming. Have a good week, everybody. And we will see all of you out there at 4:30 for the work session.